And fantastic. Happy afternoon. I almost said good afternoon, everybody. Along with my co-host and my partner, Shawn Francis, I'm Brian Altunian, co-host of our Just Two Dads podcast, a weekly podcast that we put together, highlighting the champions and the advocates for our family members who have special needs issues, medically complex issues, a new term that I've learned from our guest today. I'm excited for you to hear from our guest who himself is an advocate and a champion. And so we'll be welcoming Matt Faler to the call here in just a second. So stay tuned. It's going to be an amazing episode today. Awesome. And almost right on cue, there's my daughter, Jo. So Matt, you're going to get a chance to my daughter, Jo, participates quite a bit in the in our chat. Hi, Jo. I love you, honey. For those of you who don't know, my daughter, Jordan, lives in the upstate New York area, and she's a huge fan. We've had her on the show a couple of times. Was dealt with some special needs issues early on, had some struggles in school, learning disabilities, and we had IEPs for her, Matt, from the time that she was, really IEPs from kindergarten on. Early intervention, her diagnosis when she was 18 years old with some learning issues, and has gone on to make a phenomenal life for herself. Successful now. She keeps now she's here we go. I'll put this up here. This is from Jordan. Right now I'm a special ed teacher, and the picture there's of her hugging her husband. She got married last June in upstate New York, where she lives, and just a proud dad. She's an amazing kid. Absolutely amazing. 25 years old now. So hope to all of us parents who have children who struggle. So first of all, before we jump into it, want to welcome everybody who is watching us on Facebook Live. If you're watching us on our YouTube channel, thank you. Please subscribe. Feel free to share. We're also on podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, Pandora, anywhere there's a podcast outlet, you probably can find us. We're about to be featured on a new empowerment channel on Roku. We'll be talking about that coming up in the future. And we have a show also on WSTX AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So wherever you are catching our show today, whether it's live or tape or on podcast, welcome. If you're catching us live, if you want to contribute and put some comments in the chat here for us and for our guest, Matt, we welcome that, and glad to have you all here with us, and Jo in particular, my daughter. I love it when she participates. So before we get into it, Matt, we're gonna chat with you in just a second. I want to say hello to my co-host and my close business partner, friend, family, Mr. Shawn Francis. How are you today, Mr. Francis?
I am fantastic, blessed, thankful, and grateful, and anxious to get into the show. So I will simply thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're watching us live on Facebook or wherever podcasts are found, or on WSTX on St. Croix. And I want to welcome our guest today, Mr. Matt Faler. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
Yeah, and we've spoken before, but let me make sure that I'm not butchering or at least slicing your name. Is it Faler or Faler?
Faler.
Faler. Okay, good. I shall never say that incorrectly again. But you are like us, a warrior as a parent to a child who has some, I'm going to say special needs. You've taught us a new definition of that word. That's an ever evolving thing. And what I like about it is that your term that you use it without any judgment of anyone who does in fact use special needs. And quite frankly, that's a topic for an entire show in the future. I'm sure we could talk about that a little here today. But we always talk about you may not see yourself as a hero because you're just doing what you need to do as a dad, but you're a husband. And we consider those of us who are doing what we need to do still heroes nonetheless, and every hero has an origin. So tell us a little bit about yourself, going back to how you were raised, how that affects who you are and everything, and leading up to the situation with your child and their diagnosis.
Man, I don't really like talking about myself because that's not really the story, but the story is typical household, mother, father. I mean, they've been married, I think, gosh, I think 50 years. Unfortunately, I don't think we had that celebration because due to COVID, so that was a little bit harsh. But other than that, bachelor's degree, nothing in my line was anything, or my wife's line was anything that could have, made this situation apparent that was going to be coming about with our daughter. Really, bachelor's degree in business administration, played football throughout high school and, middle school and all of that. Didn't make it to the college ranks, but definitely a lot of fun. Personally,
what position
myself,
did you play?
What's that?
What position did you play?
I played center and defensive line. More so on the flip side of the future now. I actually ref anywhere from 3rd to 4th grade kids football to varsity high school football. Fantastic. So I'm also in that as well, and returning the favor back to the field of those that once I was irritating people on the refs. So. So I now know what it's like to be on the other side of the whistle, if you get what I mean.
Gotcha.
I'm a parent of athletes, and so I'm the other side of that triumvirate. I'm the guy yelling at the umps.
Hey,
Are you blind?
There's different Friday, Saturday, and Sunday rules. Okay, that's all I got to say.
Good to know.
Exactly.
That's funny.
But I can get into our daughter Aria. my backstory is not real. My personal backstory and my growing up's not real interesting. But our daughter. My wife's pregnancy was completely normal, typical. Nothing came about in terms of any knowledge of anything that would propose this situation appearing. Our daughter is one of 5 that they know of with a rare genetic condition related to magnesium depletion. Easiest way to understand this is a typical average adult takes 400 to 600 milligrams of magnesium a day. She needs over 3,000 milligrams of magnesium a day just to be stable, to prevent potential seizures and things of that nature. So she is diagnosed with an epilepsy disorder, potentially that is causing these issues related to magnesium dumping.
Wow. So and your wife's the chemical makeup, like nothing would have indicated.
So a little bit more backstory to that situation.
Yeah. Because how does that happen?
Our daughter was resuscitated at birth. She spent 15 days in our local hospital in the NICU. She was born with bilateral clavicle fractures. The one was a hairline, the other one was a complete fracture. Typically, you have one in a typical birth, not a C-section, typical, just normal natural delivery. Wife was on time, nothing of that, nature of, anything that we can understand that was, birth trauma or anything like that. Our daughter had her first seizure 8 hours after birth.
Wow.
We were awoken the next morning to my mother-in-law coming into the hospital room where we were staying. Basically, the doctor's asking me to sign an authorization for them to do an MRI as well as a spinal tap. So signing that document was a little bit scary. The first time I've ever had to do anything like that, waking from a slumber. Now, beyond us knowing that, this situation had been happening about 2 hours prior to them coming to our room, because my mother-in-law spent the night in the NICU with our daughter because we didn't want to leave her alone. And I'll tell you, those 15 days that she's been in the NICU, she never was alone. We had a family member with her, or myself or my wife in the room with her. She was never left alone. But going forward with this, it was a whole journey of 15 days in the NICU with having seizures, trying to figure it out, trying to find the right meds, trying to do all that. And then it goes forward with another 32-day stay up at OHSU Dornbecker Hospital in Portland, Oregon.
Wow,
interesting. And besides the seizures, like this, the diagnosis, this magnesium depletion, was that caught in the very, very beginning, or is that something that...
So, yeah, I can go into that. That involves that 32-day hospital stay. I'm more than happy to share the story. This story could change somebody's life. That's why we'll go on later on of why I do what I do. But they did not find this in the 15 days in the NICU at our local hospital. At one point, it was about 2 months after we had been in the hospital after she had born, going back and forth between a specialist up in Portland, just diagnosing, trying to find the right meds to alleviate the seizures. At one point, our daughter stopped breathing in our car on the way home from just us going to get coffee or whatever. And I remember the first time calling 911. That was just, and I still remember to this day very vividly. And at that point, we went to our local hospital. Our doctor at the time, her neurologist was like, just give her some more Keppra, and we'll do an outpatient EEG next week.
Oh my gosh.
What are you talking about? She just stopped breathing in our car. Come on.
Yeah.
So at this point started my advocacy journey, and my wife's advocacy journey for medically complex. And we got them to keep her overnight. They ran an EEG at the local hospital, just couldn't find anything. Then basically the next morning, we advocated for her to be transported via basically, the term is life flight, via just ground, by a specialty pediatric ambulance from the hospital in Portland. Came down and got her. They have basically a nurse, an EMT, and a respiratory therapist. So it's a real specialty critical care situation. When we got up to this, the Children's Hospital in Portland, at 32 days, they were trying to figure out, again, meds, what's going on, genetics, etc. As some may know, the ketogenic diet was actually created for epilepsy. So at one point when Aria was intractable...
Wait, just say that again, just so people get that.
Yeah.
The ketogenic diet.
The ketogenic diet was actually invented due to... sorry, I'm Googling it here so I can get the right information, but the ketogenic diet was actually around since the 1920s as a treatment for intractable epilepsy.
No kidding.
Wow.
So there are a lot of kiddos that are epilepsy kiddos, or adults, or anybody who have been successful with the ketogenic diet in preventing seizures. So when these meds weren't working or weren't stopping the seizures, they said, hey, let's check into ketogenic. So they ran some electrolyte panels and discovered the low magnesium. Now, when I tell you low magnesium, a typical adult, the numbers may be skewed because they're different per hospital, but a typical adult blood level magnesium is between, say, 1.4 to 1.6, like on the low end, to like 2.3 when you do like a blood serum level. When they found hers, it was 0.8.
Wow.
Right. So they found hers through this ketogenic panel. And as much advocation and as much anger and whatever we have with the situation, we have to be thankful for the doctors that found this, because then that started the journey of later on, we were hemming and hawing about doing genetic testing. And so we did a genetic test. And this comes back to your question of, were there any genetics or anything like that done? And your wife and whatever. So the wife and I have an actual copy of this genetic disorder each. So in the body, we have a good copy and we have a bad copy in my wife and I, right? Unfortunately, Aria was blessed with 2 bad copies. So our good copy, my wife, Julia, and I, makes up for the good copy makes up for the bad copy.
Right.
And even more so, as I learn more about genetics and all of this medical journey that we've been on with our daughter, if the wife and I were to have, say, version A each, because, for example, she has, say, version A and I have version B of this genetic disorder. If we were to both have, say, version A, what that would have meant is that somebody in our historical hierarchy of genetics and family tree scenario would have basically procreated somebody together. So basically, we would have been relatives.
Yeah.
Wow.
It sounds like.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's rare, this disease that you're talking about.
It is, because, for example, when we first found this out, which fast forward now to us going to Seattle Children's Hospital now for a second opinion, is when we found out this genetic condition through genetic testing done at the Children's Hospital in Portland. We asked the genetic, counselor, what if we have another kid? What's the situation with that? She said it's a 1 in 4 chance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the blue eye, brown eye, markers on DNA, right? To some degree, right? If each of you has one. Now, the fact that each of you had a bad marker there and you came together, it doesn't. Is it rare to have a good and bad?
That's not a
question.
That's not a question that I specifically asked. I just was just blown away by the fact that we just had 2 different copies of the same thing. And let alone that somehow, our daughter was, I say blessed because our daughter is amazing, with 2 bad copies. Whereas my wife and I were blessed with one good copy and one bad copy.
Right. And and you say it's so rare. How many people actually have this?
When we found out, which is about 3 years ago, because our daughter just turned 3 in February, they had only been studying this genetic condition for the last, say, 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Wow. So in total of right now, maybe 5 years of total studies done on it. If you were to look up the actual condition, you will see difference. You will see a different in each individual person that's been diagnosed with it. There is a family that actually has 2 kiddos diagnosed with this condition, that the 2 kiddos in that exact family are completely different from each other.
Wow.
And this condition, what's that?
No, go ahead.
So this condition in itself, and I hesitate to share the actual condition itself because it's completely different with everybody. So if you were to look it up, it's going to say this is the condition and this is the causes. So what we were told is that Aria is completely different than what the book shows. She has some conditions that other kids don't show. She has some other conditions that, she does better than, say, somebody else has been diagnosed with this condition. So we hesitate on sharing it. Just it's a personal matter. But again, it causes developmental delay. It causes, she doesn't walk, she doesn't crawl, she's nonverbal. She's in early intervention, all that kind of stuff. I mean, she has a whole charter bus full of doctors, no joke. But it's been a journey of advocation and also not taking no for an answer. It's been, who else can we talk to?
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, I think that any parent who goes through, something where there's no like definitive answer, the level of frustration gets to the point where you're like, you automatically, I don't want to say automatically, but for the most part, you automatically become an advocate because you demand answers. Don't we demand answers as parents, especially men, right? Come on. Yeah. If you don't know give me somebody who knows what they're talking about here.
The answer that I hate most about what that just said, and it's not you that said this is my wife that says this all the time. When our daughter has we call them events because we just hate that S word, right? Because it's we're also very superstitious sometimes. And I know people and their superstitions and just how they feel about that, but it's just something that we've been accustomed to. But, she'll just say, well, it's epilepsy. And I'm like, no, I'm not satisfied with that answer. Right. Like if something were to happen, she's like, well, it's epilepsy. You can't it's just epilepsy. I'm like, I'm not satisfied with that answer.
Interesting.
I want answers. I want facts. I want, whatever. You have people, when we talk about epilepsy itself, our daughter is affected by full moons and supermoons.
Wow.
Yeah.
How so?
So we have a good friend up in Portland. So our daughter takes right now, currently she's only on, knock on wood, 1 seizure med. At certain point she was on 3, certain meds she was on 2. Now she's only on 1. It's Keppra, which is supposedly the most safe and controlled seizure medication that's out there. So she takes CBD and all that kind of stuff as well. She has a medical card and, all that's legal here in Oregon. And, so we have a good friend who's also in this group, which is another episode, but we are part of one of the, if the not only non-profit government approved agencies or nonprofits that provides discounted cannabis medicine to pediatric kids in the country.
Wow. Amazing.
Wow. Is that something that you can share?
Yeah. I mean, I'm more than happy to share. It's called the Forest Initiative. It's out of Eugene, Oregon. I'll be more than happy to share the contact information that these guys can put in the notes, or you can certainly reach out to me. There's a lot of that out there. That's like Charlotte's Web is a big one down in Colorado. But this stuff is, I mean, it's the only nonprofit that we know of that is doing what it's doing. And it took a long time to get approved by the IRS.
I'm surprised that they even got it done.
Right? Because as we know,
we haven't even approved for regular medical use in all the states.
Yes,
So.
and we can either do this on another episode or we can talk about it now. But about one cannabidiol drug that was approved by the FDA and why it doesn't work for a lot of epilepsy patients.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so again, let me go back to this whole situation of the full moon before we get on this other topic.
Yes.
So the full moon, we have a good friend up in Portland who basically has said her daughter, she tracks it, and all of us have a moon tracker on our phone, like the percentage of the moon and when the full moon is. I mean, a lot of epilepsy parents have this. I have a whole folder on my iPhone for my daughter, like my chart and all that kind of stuff. Right?
Yeah.
God.
She has her own little screen on my phone that has her picture behind it. And like, I just flip through it and I'm like, okay, I need to go to the Aria screen to go to my chart or whatever. It just helps me organize. I'm major OCD. Anyways, her daughter, our friend, she's also medically complex, has, seizures and all that. She has tracked her daughter for about 3 years. So about as long as we've known them. When the moon gets about 80% or so, that's when her daughter starts going off the rails with seizures.
Wow.
Now, in hindsight, the situation, as we know, I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, where we had the full moon, but it was also like a super moon and then the lunar, whatever.
Right.
Aria slid on right by that, was not affected. But there are other times, right, where there is a full moon that she just escalates. And it's weird because every time somebody says super moon or whatever, we're like, okay, like great. Because, a couple of months ago, we went up to Washington for a little social distance, getaway. And there was a full moon during that time, and she just went off the rails with seizures. I mean, we had to give rescue meds, which are rectal, that we have to give to her, and it knocks her out for a number of hours. But anyways, and it's weird because you will get doctors that'll agree with you on the full moon, and you'll get doctors that won't. But if you were to talk to anybody who works at a bank, a senior living facility, or even nurses, hospitals and all those places get crazy around full moons. People's attitudes change. People's auras change around full moons, maybe because they're not sleeping as well because of the brightness of the moon or the pull, the gravitational pull. Our daughter has also been affected by barometric pressure, in terms of when a storm comes in and the pressure changes and all of that. We've seen that. There was a time where we actually had to hospitalize her because of a storm that came in because she just went off the rails. It was a nice sunny day, and then all of a sudden a storm came in. It was thunder, lightning, whatever. So believe as you may, but if you were to ask an epilepsy parent, they would tell you the same thing.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Prior to having Aria, what were your thoughts about, did you have any at all? And had you, about how a full moon would affect behavior or anything like that at all?
I used to work at a credit union back in the day. It was a teller. And you'd always have my coworker saying, "Oh, it must be a full moon because, Joe Smith came in and he's all grumpy and whatever." So I had some understanding of it. Also my wife worked in a senior care facility for a number of years while we were dating before we got married, and she saw the effects of it as well.
It's interesting because, in fiction, full moon, werewolves, right. Maybe there's some connection to all of that, right? The idea of this concept,
right?
Of
and you'll hear
affected by that,
right? You'll hear a lot of neurologists or brain doctors being like, there's nothing. I want to develop a study myself, put a lot of epilepsy patients in a room or somewhere, hook them all up to EEG machines, and then put their foot in their mouth and be like, tell me what the seizure activity is like. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I had no idea that parents of children with epilepsy have to deal with that on a really monthly basis.
Right.
And
go ahead, Shawn.
I was just going to say, one can be skeptical about it, or at least say that you've never heard it. But as it relates to epilepsy and epileptic seizures specifically, unless you're a parent or caregiver of one who has epilepsy, you're not in a position to really fully challenge it. Now, if you have if you're a doctor, you have a couple, a degree and, title and that kind of thing. You're probably full enough of yourself to just full on challenge it.
Right.
But, my position is that, I hadn't heard that before. So
Yeah.
you know, it's another example, I think, of why we should be a little more curious than arriving at judgment, because I hadn't heard that.
And also, you know, just hearing this concept, we should just be more empathetic to folks around this time of the month. Again, for those of us who've never encountered it, we never thought about that, but now it's reason to be empathetic about, you know, people.
I mean, I'm personally thankful that when we had that, you know, on the West Coast here, when we had that big was a solar eclipse, you know, say 5 years ago or so, you know, it was big up here in Oregon. I can only imagine what would happen with her. I haven't talked to any of my friends that have a kiddo that was around during that time, and I'm curious to see if they had any ill effects with the big solar eclipse that happened a few years ago. That was, I think, about a year or two before Aria was born. But Shawn, you asked a question, or asked me to get into it, about the FDA and the approval of cannabidiol drugs. So if you'd like, I can get into that and explain Epidiolex.
Oh, you know, please do. And then we want to make sure that we're going to get the entity that you're referring to in on the screen, as well as you sharing it verbally, so that those that are listening versus watching
for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to look it up here real quick. But anyways, so Epidiolex was the first and only approved, FDA approved, basically, medication for epilepsy patients. My wife chimed in and she goes, I was pregnant with Aria when the eclipse happened.
Yes, I just noticed that. Thank you, thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Julia. But anyways, so Epidiolex is a synthetic version of the CBD drug, and it's synthetic, so it's you know, what do you call it? Refined. It's necessarily not natural. So it was great because it was finally, when it got approved and we were watching this and we're like, okay, this is going to start turning the tables of the federal government being like, look, there is benefit of medicinal, you know, medicine with marijuana. And when that got approved, we were talking to our neurologist who's up in Seattle Children's, amazing guy. Love that guy. He was like, well, you know, there's good and there's bad with it. And we started talking to him more and more about it, seeing if it would be good for Aria. Well, a lot of people have either worked. It's specifically prescribed for a epilepsy syndrome called Dravet syndrome. That's a spectrum in the epilepsy world. There's like LGS and there's Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet syndrome and all these things. But this was specifically designed that you have to have a marker basically on your EEG that shows a certain waveform for Dravet syndrome, or I think Lennox-Gastaut. Aria doesn't have those waveforms. But anyways, he was saying that a lot of patients who have been on Epidiolex or have tried to go on Epidiolex have either failed on it because it is synthetic. Number two, have either had to stay on it and add in THC or go completely off of it because it doesn't work.
Okay.
So, yes, there are some people that are successful on it, but I will tell you that drug is thousands of dollars a month.
Wow.
I mean, probably $3,000, maybe.
Wow.
I haven't really looked into it myself because Aria doesn't qualify for it, but it's very, very expensive.
Man.
Wow. It's interesting. So I'm going to put up on the screen. So the Forest Initiative.
Yeah, they have the Facebook page, I think, is a little bit better for them. That's just something I quickly Googled.
Okay.
But they do help. I mean, they do help kids in the Northwest. You know, North. I'm going to give you this one too.
It's called TJ's Gardens for those.
TJ's Gardens. TJ's Gardens is the dispensary that has started this project, but now it's gone completely, not astray, but has gone completely separate entity. As Forest Initiative. This is I just sent it to you guys, the Facebook page for the Forest Initiative. This has some more information. That TJ's Gardens one is a little outdated. I didn't prepare knowing that we were going to talk about this.
No. This is
so this is kind of on the fly, but you know, we have our own Facebook private groups where we talk about, you know, dosing and what we call microdosing and all that kind of stuff. great resources, even for folks that are outside of the Northwest area. Check it out. It's
so I'll just let people know it's the Forest Initiative. THE Forest is spelled FORREST.
Right.
Initiative.
So
the Forest
the
Initiative.
reason behind the name is there's a kiddo who was in the group, is now, I guess you could say he's still in the group. It's a son of the founder of the Forest Initiative. His name is Forrest. And basically he got on cannabidiol drugs or medicine and became seizure free.
Wow.
And we've had many success stories with this group, where a lot of kiddos are seizure free because of cannabidiol, cannabis medicine.
Yeah, when you say cannabidiol, and I know you don't claim to be a doctor or whatever, but you have your experience in, because I know and Brian asked me, off camera, recently, just, hey, referring to my wife, have you and Laura thought about cannabis for Elijah? I said, yeah, we've thought about it, but we haven't done anything. So when you say cannabidiol, right, that obviously
it's just like it's I just say it as cannabidiol, cannabis. The brain actually has, again, I am the lay person with all of this, but the brain has actual cannabidiol receptors in the brain.
Right. And what I was getting at is that when you say that, part of the reason why that's general is because one needs to obviously speak to someone that's very, very familiar or a professional to determine what they should take to begin with, because there's so many things of a cannabidiol nature. And then at the same time, also figure out what the correct dosage is. And it's a process, so to speak, I would imagine.
Well, but also keep in mind, cannabidiol and cannabis are two parts of the same plant. They're actually different, right? So cannabis has the THC component that most people find in marijuana. Cannabidiol is the CBD aspect of it. So CBD and cannabis are two different elements coming from the same plant.
Correct.
Just to be clear, right? So cannabis is the one that
because you can get hemp, which is the non-THC forming stuff. But there have been a lot of success stories. One of those success stories that was majorly focused on was in Colorado with Charlotte. I think her name's Charlotte Figge. The last name. She just passed away, I believe, last year actually. But she had major success story with CBD, cannabis medicine, in basically having a better life because of it. Hers is called Charlotte's Web. It's out of Colorado. That's because CNN blew up that story, Sanjay Gupta, all of that. So that's when people started getting real interested in cannabis for epilepsy.
Yeah. And for a lot of other medical procedures.
Oh yeah, for sure. Totally. Yeah. It's not just for epilepsy. There's tons of other stuff. And Shawn, to speak to your point of autism, with your son, there's another resource that I would love to share with others that are out there, because my mother-in-law directly works as an office manager for an acupuncture clinic here in our town, and they actually unfortunately lost their original founder of the clinic just about the time that Aria was born. But she was doing clinical studies on Chinese massage for kids with autism. And I can provide the resources for that as well. I'd have to Google it real quick.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
But yeah, I mean, these are we can get into the story a little bit about what we were blessed without in terms of a typical daughter. We were blessed with the fact that we have strived to provide this information and resources for those that need it, because we struggled in the beginning. I remember hospital night after hospital night during those 32 days stay of researching literally different types of magnesium, because there's a whole, we could go on a whole thing about this, but bioavailability of magnesium in terms of how it is, processed in the body.
Processed in the system. I learned about the fact that I didn't even realize there are different types of magnesium.
Yep.
Until my wife and I started looking into it for like rejuvenation and deals with joint pain and headaches and things like that too. Yeah.
Improve your sleep.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, because there are different types. There's sulfate. There's Aria's on glycinate.
Concentrate.
Right.
Right.
And then there's ones that are what are called chelate. So they're bound to a protein. So they're easier to process in the body. But even just in that, I mean, Aria has crazy stool issues because she takes so much magnesium. But, this is a part of what my wife and I try to do is when we get these avenues like your channel and my channel, we just try to return the favor. I like return the favor rather than paying it forward because I think paying forward is a little overused. So I like returning the favor because so many people have returned the favor to us in the beginning when our daughter was born, whether it be financial contributions, just being there for us to give us a hug or bringing us a meal. And so now I'm a huge advocate of like, all right, cool. I have some resources or connections that I want to connect you with.
Beautiful. Yeah. And definitely before we run out of time, I definitely want to talk about your trajectory into doing what you're doing on your podcast. But let's finish this conversation here about your is it your mother-in-law's involvement?
Yeah, so she works for the clinic. It's called Salem Acupuncture. It's in Salem, Oregon. But the original studier of this, I provided you I don't even know how to pronounce it, but Sensory Training Institute.
Kijong.
Right.
Sensory.
Yeah. But you will see if you Google Luisa Silva, she was one of the original leads on this Chinese massage for pediatrics and autism. It's very, very interesting to see the progress that I've heard with this. They've tried it on Aria because being in the epilepsy world, there's kind of a connection, unfortunately, to some people that have epilepsy and are on that, track or potentially being in that autism world as well.
Interesting.
But for those that are watching and those that are listening later on, check that out. If you've got a kid with autism or somebody that has autism, check that out.
Just sent it off to a friend of mine as we were having this conversation.
Right, because it is something that you can do in your home. It's a massage, and there's a book out there that she wrote.
What is her name again?
Luisa Silva.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Luisa Silva.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, gosh, guys, I could go into another avenue of cranial sacral massage. It's a form of chiropractic, and the fact that we have, and I got kind of put down on this term, and this is where I get into the whole medically complex thing. But there is alternative medicine out there, say cannabis, chiropractic, acupuncture, alternative medicine to say Western medicine, more so Eastern medicine or whatever. So Aria in her early years, 6 months, 7 months, she was having basically 100 seizures a day. No joke.
Wow.
Okay. So we got information from a friend who's like, you need to go see this chiropractor up in Portland. And she does what's called cranial sacral massage. It's manipulation of basically the skull. And Aria went from 100 to basically down into the 20s the next day after seeing her.
Wow. That's significant.
Yeah. And the neurologist wasn't on board with it. When the chiropractor reached out, was like, hey, I just want to work with you together. She's like, I'm not saying that you don't need a Western medicine doctor or an MD or whatever. She's like, you need all of them. But the neurologist was like, no, I don't believe in that. We're like,
well,
so yeah, it's been an interesting, we have doctors on board now, and that's why we've gone, different ways. We could go into the fact of the difference between a DO doctor and an MD doctor. DO being the study of osteopath and the study of the whole body versus MD, typical medicine.
Well, I think a couple things first, Matt. We have been in the habit of recording some additional content outside of the regular, sort of weekly interview podcast, where we get into a little bit more detail on certain subject matters. And when we launch our website, we'll have additional content. This is the kind of thing, and I think especially, not that I don't want to be involved, but I think that you and Shawn can, talk about these kinds of, this would be some great content for our listeners. And I think for your listeners, probably hear it from you quite a bit, but for people in our circle as well who are looking at, what solutions. But I'm a true believer that our MD doctors, medical doctors, have very limited resources. Again, listen, thankfully you had a doctor who was able to identify the magnesium depletion. And so that's, that's, we're thankful for the medical education that we have in this country, but it's also somewhat limited, as we all know. So alternative forms of medicine, especially as we're dealing with children on the autism spectrum, I think that would be a fascinating bit of content for us to be able to create and share. So maybe we should think about doing that. And Shawn, you could try some of this stuff with Elijah and see how, if you get some effect. But before we could do that. And Matt, this is fascinating. We can have several conversations here. I think. But I want to know how you went from, because what we do a lot on this podcast is we highlight these folks who take the circumstances that they're dealing with, that in many cases can be debilitating as a parent, and could be can put us into a state of inertia, but take that and transform that into an outward effort to be an advocate and a supporter and somebody who inspires, as you talk about. Other people to come to action, and looking at how we can put people together. So I want to talk, how did you, what made you, clearly you're an advocate for your daughter. Clearly you're an advocate for better, solutions for her. How did you turn that into an inward effort to the outward effort, and you launching your mindful, inspirational campaign?
No, you're fine. So I mean, it's always been a dream of my wife and I to either write a book or start a blog or a vlog, a video version, right? And I'm just not good with words. The wife is the word of master of the both of us. I love to talk to random people. I mean, I think it goes back to my sales days of just, hey, somebody walks in. I worked at Circuit City, and I was like, oh, you got an Oregon State shirt on. Let's talk. And then we start talking about TVs, right? Sorry, UCLA. I know you got.
That's all right. Anyways. Whatever. It's all right. It's all good.
You get Steve back here, right? Anyways, but I think it's the fact of, we've developed so much knowledge. I joke that I should have an honorary pharmacy degree or whatever because of all the meds that we have for Aria and researching them and whatever. But I wanted to go further with this because, as I state in, on my page, Mindful Inspiration Champion, which is on, Facebook, the website's under construction. It's available on all the podcast channels, pretty much like you guys. It is about identifying everyone's stories, right? Everyone has a story. That story may just connect with one person. It may connect with 100 people. But my goal is to connect every single person with every single story that I share, like just one person. If I connect one person with that story from that individual, and they then go forward in understanding that it's not just game, set, match, it's, look, there's another resource. So, basically hearing stories is the source for all lessons to be learned in life. When we can identify parallels between our stories, we feel together and not alone. We feel more capable and we feel more connected to one another, and we are all connected. And it's not necessarily about interviewing people that are famous or important. It's about getting somebody who has a story. And my job as a podcaster or as the champion of this is to literally champion their story, because there are a lot of stories that are out there that can change people's lives.
We are very much aligned in that thought process, and we feel exactly the same way. And these stories, and we get phenomenal feedback from our listeners. Robert Moorhead, who's one of Shawn's childhood friends from the U.S. Virgin Islands, is a very frequent participant in the communication, the conversation. And so, yes, we agree. These stories need to be told and need to have a spotlight shined on them.
And I mean, the other thing too is there's a lot of folks out there that don't have the strength nor the passion that maybe I have or others have to advocate or to speak up. As I should have said in the beginning with my story, is that I was raised in a very Western medicine household, and you go to the doctor gives you a drug. You're like, all right, take the drug. Like, all right, I got an issue. Give me the drug. Right. Like, but it's about understanding that there's another option. And I have to, before we end this, I have to thank my wife for that. I would be very, dishonorable in understanding that my wife changed that vision and Aria changed that vision, and understanding that there is alternatives out there that may be more beneficial for you, and seek those alternatives.
Right.
Love
right.
that.
And I think what people need to know too is, because it gets very easy to choose one over the other, because you may find more success with Eastern medicine, and as a result may be turned off by the closed-mindedness or territorial approach that is taken with Western medicine, when the truth of the matter is they both serve their purpose when used. I don't want to say, I want to say used correctly, but it sounds like I need to be a doctor to determine what is correctly. But the bottom line is that, what all of this teaches us is that the most dangerous thing on the planet, the most lethal thing on the planet, and potentially the deadliest, is a closed mind.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you talk about, what you reiterated in the beginning of this is, changing the scope of, as you say in the term that I use, is when you have somebody who's special needs, right? Or you get that label. A lot of special needs kids and people in society get stamped, or they get a box, that box gets stamped, and then they get shoved and they get pushed aside, right? Because they're not, quote, typical, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And everybody's normal, right? Everybody's normal. But you may have somebody who's not typical, or you may have somebody that's typical, right? Our daughter is not typical, but she's normal.
Yeah.
She still functions like any other, individual. And then also, as you were speaking in the term that my wife and I coined, and she's the one that technically coined this, I can't take all the credit for it, and all of this, again, spinning my head and being like, look, this is the situation, is medically complex. Because again, when you say special needs, you're already raising the bar for somebody to be like, oh, you got a special needs kid, right? Whereas if you say medically complex, they're more so identifying with, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I have a good friend that I've had on my channel who basically is like, she has a seeing eye dog, and she's like, I want people to see me for being me, not Emily with the dog.
Right. Right. And it's funny, as you're saying that, it's funny. This is why we continue to learn. I just realized that I use the term special needs for the benefit of other people, not for. I don't usually use it. It's rare in general conversation. As I'm doing that, I find that I'm just realizing now that I'm saying it. Oh, this is so you know what I mean. Whereas in most cases, I'll say, on the autism spectrum, but it's very interesting. Again, it goes back to the same thing. When you have an experience as a caregiver or a parent of a child with special needs, you got some very certain opinions that you arrive at based on your experience. We can't allow that to prevent us from attaining what we just talked about, which is an open mind, generally speaking.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think, and it goes back to what you were saying too, Matt, is it goes back to the question that Shawn asks near the end of every show, which I think you've already answered it for us. But as we evolve and the benefit that we have as human beings is that we can evolve within the same lifetime, right? We can evolve and change. And I think we have that over the other animals in the kingdom. And Shawn, do you want to ask?
Yes.
You want to ask
I will.
Matt your question?
I will. And it's funny because you just mentioned the hierarchy of the inhabitants of this planet in terms of, animals. We're at the top of the food chain, right? However, all other animals in the quote unquote wild, including domesticated dogs and everything, they act as they're supposed to. We're the ones that, carry on in ways that are otherwise maybe other than ourselves, so to speak. So we get set in how we are, how we think, what we do, and we don't change. And because we have to change, we have to grow. And if we're not growing, we're dying. Begs the question, Matt, if you can think of, give us an example, if you have one other than the one that you've technically already given, of one thought or belief that you held dear and believed tremendously so, but no longer subscribe to.
Is that, special needs or medically complex people in this world are still capable. I saw them from a different light before. I'll put my foot in my mouth right now and say, you know what? Before we had our daughter, it was, yeah, you are special needs or you're in a wheelchair or whatever. I was like, okay. But I didn't really investigate that. I didn't really look at in terms of, okay, you're in a wheelchair. You could also take this, and I've had this conversation with another friend of mine who's been on my channel, is you could take this to veterans, right? You could take this to a veteran and you could say, hey, are you a veteran? And you could have somebody say no, but truly they are a veteran, but they don't feel like they're a veteran because they never were deployed. They never were in active combat duty. They were in the National Guard, right? So if you were to say to that same person, hey, have you ever served? Changes that whole spectrum of the conversation, because then you develop that relationship and understand that, because some of those people are just so humble that they don't want to be honored in the way they think a veteran typically is, in somebody that's been in active duty combat or, things of that nature. So, your whole spectrum of life changes when you're able to open your mind and be more understanding of, yeah, you know what, our daughter, there's a shirt that's out there that my wife loves that she saw. So our daughter has a G tube, right? And people sometimes, when her shirt comes up, they look at it and they stare. But there's a shirt out there that says, hey, my child has 2 belly buttons. What's your superpower?
Love that.
Love that. And I saw a podcast the other day. I saw an interview where someone was talking about the labels that we have. And that's where you're talking about being able to, that's where change comes in. Because if you have labels that are not meant to diminish, not meant to separate, but they do, because there's value in you finding your tribe, but not at the expense of forgetting that we all belong to the same tribe, which is that everybody wants to be seen. It sounds like what you're talking about is just like, when it comes to people with a disability, special needs, whatever it is you want to call it, you just, because of your experience, you now see them with, maybe with vision as opposed to sight, because when sight is limiting, vision is limitless. So when you see someone, when the mind is open, you can see someone with vision as opposed to the eyes. With the eyes, you see what's in front of you, and there's little, if any, curiosity there, and a little more judgment, even though you don't realize it. When we see with vision, we judge less, and that has far less limitation. So I love that.
Yeah, because you could even go on the limb here and say those that have ADHD or those that are in that realm, they get put in a box and they get labeled because they have a condition. But you look at them and you were to give them a certain task, like organization or something like that, or something with their hands. 9 times out of 10, they probably do it with better than somebody that doesn't have that situation.
Right. Where's the superpower?
For sure.
Right. There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Wow.
Well, listen, Matt, this is fascinating. And Shawn and I say this almost every episode that we do. The hour goes by so quickly, especially when we've got, such a fascinating and engaging guest such as yourself. And you really are you're a pro at all of this. So as we kind of wrap the show, I know that we always say the same thing, and Robert mentions this a lot when he makes comments like, you guys should be doing this for 2 hours, because we know that we have enough content here between us that we could go on for a couple of episodes, I'm sure. And maybe that's what we should do. We should have you back and talk about something very specific. We are planning a multi-day conference, by the way, for many of our guests to be able to spend a little bit more time addressing a broader audience. And so as we put that together, it's going to happen sometime this summer. We would love to have you be a part of that and be a speaker at that conference. We'll do it all via Zoom, just to be respectful of COVID conditions. And because I think that people are going to want to hear from you. And at the very least, they should be able to go to your channel, your Facebook page, The Mindful Champion, but also be able to follow you. I think your story is fascinating, and so grateful for Julia for piping in and contributing significantly today. And obviously she's been a huge inspiration and partner with you and all of this. So
I'd be remiss, I don't mean to interrupt you, Brian, but I'd be remiss to mention that our daughter also has a public Facebook page. Oh
my gosh.
It's Aria's Army. If you were to throw that up there, I know I threw it at you last minute, but our daughter's journey and her story, we provide as public. We don't shy away from sharing her story, her life, her progress, her, times that she has, a challenge. If you go on there, you can see it. We're very public. We want to share that story because, again, we want to help change somebody's life that potentially is going through our scenario, but can deal with it sooner and get the situation, these resources.
It's fantastic. Well, go ahead, Brian.
And that's why we do this. And that's why we do this, this show, Matt, is so that, people can. And by the way, most men, this is a conversation that a lot of the dads have been left out, on a public scale. And so that's why we joke, we call this today's show Tres Padres, or the three, just three dads. I love that you're doing this work out there, that you're a voice out there for folks and for, all of our listeners. I'm sure that there's a tremendous amount of value that they got. And yes, I think people need to hear your story and get access to this, know that they're not alone. And I think at the end of the day, that's really how we always end the show, letting people know that, today more than ever, empathy and love is really what it's all about. When we look at somebody who is in a situation that we're not in or that we're not familiar with, as long as we approach that situation with empathy and love and know that somebody's situation is unique to them, and yet probably not unique and probably shared with a lot of folks around the world. So coming in with empathy and love is what it's all about. So I want to thank you. I want to thank our listeners, our viewers, the people who catch us on the YouTube channel. For those who are listening on WSTX AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for being part of our family and being part of this story. And hopefully you'll share, continue to comment, let us know if there's other things that you'd like us to be talking about, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, share as much as you can, and let's and keep introducing folks to us, that we can have phenomenal conversations like we had with Matt Faler today. Matt, is such a great honor having you on our show today. And we know that this is the first of many interactions we're going to have together. And so before we let you say that, Shawn, you want to sign off? Or actually, let's let Matt, you want to have one quick wrap?
I
just for you to wrap up the show.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. And then for those that are
Shawn will wrap it up.
For those that are listening versus watching, if you could, Matt, go ahead and give Aria's page state.
For sure.
State the page. Yeah. So
Aria's page is literally on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Aria's Army. There's a picture of our daughter on there. It looks like it's a sunset picture. I think there's like 800 and some odd people. My goal personally is to get it to 1,000. I've had that goal since Aria was born. It'd be amazing if we could get there. That's just a tremendous goal of mine, and I'd feel accomplished just being able to share that. But my end of this is don't stop. Don't stop. Don't be satisfied with no. There's always another alternative. There's always another hospital. There's always another doctor. There's always that second, third, fourth, or fifth opinion. With Aria, we went through 2 opinions before we settled and found some amazing doctors. So that's just my advice is don't sit still. Always research, and reach out if you have questions to people.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. And for those of you that are tuning in, watching us live on Facebook, thank you. For those that are watching us on our YouTube page, thank you. Make sure to subscribe and share. And for those that are listening wherever podcasts are found, we thank you. If you're listening on WSTX AM radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you again. Matt, thank you for your time. Brian, thank you for this opportunity and the platform that we share and our mission. And I would be remiss if I did not, as always, thank the women in my life, my mom, Jan, and my wife, Laura. I could not begin to attempt to be who I hope to become without their support. And we will see you the next time around. Thank you so much for joining us, and we love you.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks again, Matt.